Rin met Kale on a quiet afternoon when the sky looked undecided about rain. He had been leaning against a broken fence outside a closed cafe, tapping endlessly on his phone like he was waiting for the world to answer him back. She almost walked past him, but he looked up at the exact moment she glanced over, and their eyes locked for half a second too long to be accidental. "You always stare at strangers like that?" he asked with a lazy half-smile. Rin blinked, caught off guard. "Only the rude ones," she replied. He laughed, a deep sound that felt misplaced for a stranger. That laugh, she would later realize, was how he pulled people in, like a hook wrapped in charm. They talked for only 10 minutes about nothing important. The weird weather, the broken fence, the cafe that used to sell watery coffee. Yet when she walked away, she felt like she had just stepped out of something unfinished. That night, she found a message request from him, though she didn't remember giving him her name. "Nice talking to you," the message read. Her heart skipped, confused and weirdly pleased. She should have asked how he found her. Instead, she replied. Days turned into endless late-night messages, fast calls, inside jokes that felt too deep for people who barely knew each other. Kale listened closely when Rin spoke, or at least he pretended to. "You talk like someone who's been disappointed too many times," he told her once. She laughed it off, but the words lingered. When they finally met again, it felt like they were continuing an old conversation instead of starting a new one. He watched her like she was a puzzle he had already solved. "You're different in person," she said. "Better or worse?" he asked. "Stronger," she replied. He leaned closer and whispered, "Careful. Strong things break the hardest." That sentence should have scared her. Instead, it made her feel seen. Before the month ended, he was already telling her who to talk to and who to avoid. "They don't care about you like I do," he would say casually. First it sounded protective. Then it started to sound like a rule. The first real fight came without warning. Rin had posted a picture online. Just her, smiling, sunlight on her face. Kale didn't like it. "Why do you need strangers to see you?" he asked over the phone, his voice calm but sharp. "It's just a picture," she replied. "Not to them," he said. "You belong to me." The silence that followed felt heavier than shouting. "I don't belong to anyone," she said carefully. He laughed, but there was no humor in it. "You say that now." By morning, he was apologizing with long messages and soft words. "I only reacted because I love you," he wrote. Rin's chest tightened at the word love. It felt too big, too fast, but she let it wrap around her anyway. She didn't know yet that love in Kale's mouth was never a promise. It was a warning. Kale's jealousy grew the way mold spreads, quietly at first, then suddenly everywhere. Rin began to notice how his questions no longer sounded curious but suspicious. "Who was that guy in the background of your call?" Kale asked one night. "Just my neighbor passing by," she replied. "You laughed," he said. "People laugh," she answered, confused. "Not like that." By the third month, every smile she gave the world felt like theft in his eyes. He would sulk for hours after small things, then explode over things that never happened. One evening, she arrived late from work, exhausted. "You ignored me for 4 hours," he said coldly the moment she stepped inside. "I was working," she replied, dropping her bag. "You always say that." "Because it's true. Truth changes depending on who tells it," he snapped. The argument stretched deep into the night, circling itself until neither of them remembered how it started. At dawn, he held her hand and said softly, "You wouldn't hurt me on purpose, right?" Her throat tightened. "Of course not." And just like that, the blame slid back onto her shoulders without him ever needing to push. Rin stopped talking about her fears because Kale always found a way to make them sound foolish. If she said she felt lonely, he reminded her how many people wanted her. If she said she felt overwhelmed, he accused her of being dramatic. "Why do you always make problems where there are none?" he asked one evening when she said she felt him slipping away. "Because I feel it," she whispered. "Feeling isn't proof," he replied. Slowly, he began to rewrite her reality for her. When she cried, he said she was manipulating him. When she stayed quiet, he said she was punishing him. No matter what she chose, the verdict was already decided. Still, when he held her afterward and whispered, "It's always you and me against the world," she believed him. Or maybe she just needed to. Her friends noticed the change before she did. "You've gone quiet," one of them said. "You used to argue about everything." Rin smiled weakly. "I'm just tired." But the truth was heavier. She was learning how to fold herself smaller just to fit inside his moods. The first betrayal revealed itself by accident. Cale left his phone on the table while he went to shower, and it vibrated with a message that wouldn't stop lighting up the screen. Rin tried to ignore it. Then the name flashed again, short, unfamiliar, repeated too many times. She shouldn't have touched the phone. But her hands moved before her conscience could stop them. The messages were not subtle. They were not confusing. They were laughing, playful, intimate in ways that mirrored how he once spoke to her. When Cale returned, towel around his neck, he saw her face before he saw the phone in her hand. "You went through my phone?" he asked, disbelief first, anger second. "You were cheating," she said, her voice barely standing. He laughed suddenly. "That's what you found?" "What else was I supposed to see?" she asked. His eyes hardened. "I found that you don't trust me. You gave me a reason not to." "You created that reason," he said calmly. The words froze her. Somehow, in one breath, the truth had become her fault. That night, he slept peacefully. Rin did not sleep at all. Cale changed after that night, but not in the way apologies change people. He became softer in public and colder in private. Around others, he touched Rin gently, laughed loudly, called her "my heart" with an ease that fooled everyone. Alone, his eyes turned watchful, measuring her like she was an equation he no longer trusted. "Why are you so quiet lately?" he asked one evening as they sat on opposite ends of the couch. "Because every time I talk, it becomes a fight," she replied. "So now I'm the reason you're silent too?" he asked. "I didn't say that. You don't have to. You always imply." The silence after that pressed hard between them. He stood up suddenly. "You made me like this," he said. "You turned me into someone who has to check everything." Rin's voice shook. "You were already checking before I ever suspected anything." He stared at her like she had insulted his existence. "Careful," he said quietly. "You're starting to sound ungrateful." That word stayed in her mind all night. Ungrateful. As if the betrayal was a gift she had failed to appreciate. Rin began to notice how often she apologized now. For his anger. For his moods. For things she didn't even understand. "I'm sorry I made you upset," she would say, even when she was the one crying. Cale accepted these apologies with a tired nod, as if they were owed. One afternoon, she finally asked the question that had been burning in her chest for weeks. "Do you still talk to her?" she asked quietly. Cale didn't answer right away. He tapped his fingers on the table and sighed like a man who had been wronged. "Why do you want to reopen old wounds?" "Because they never closed for me." "You're choosing pain over peace," he said. "I'm choosing truth," she replied. His eyes darkened. "Truth is dangerous when you only want it to hurt," he said. In that moment, Rin understood something that made her chest ache. Cale didn't fear losing her. He feared losing control over the story. That night, he kissed her with intensity, not love. And she stayed not because she was convinced, but because leaving felt too big to survive. The next betrayal didn't come quietly. It arrived wearing honesty like a mask. Someone messaged Rin from an unfamiliar account with only one sentence. "Ask him about the weekend trip." Her hands trembled as she held the phone. When Cale returned that evening, she waited until he sat down before speaking. "Where were you last weekend?" she asked. "You know where I was," he replied without thinking. "With your cousin?" she asked. His pause was brief but deadly. "Why?" "Because someone else says you were somewhere very different." His face tightened. "So now you believe strangers over me?" "I believe patterns," she whispered. He stood slowly. "You're obsessed," he said. "You look for betrayal in everything." She raised her voice for once. "Because betrayal keeps finding me." His anger erupted then, sharp and fast. "You're the reason nothing feels safe anymore," he shouted. The room fell silent. Rin felt something shift inside her. Not heartbreak this time, not even fear. It was clarity. Painful, blinding clarity. She realized that no matter what he did, she would always be the villain in his version of the truth. After that night, Cale became distant in a way that felt deliberate, like punishment delivered in silence. He stopped calling first. He delayed replies. When Rin asked what was wrong, he answered with shrugs and cold stares. One evening she finally broke. "Why are you acting like I hurt you?" she asked. He looked at her for a long moment before saying, "Because you did." "By asking questions," she whispered. "By doubting me," he replied sharply. "By watching me like I'm your enemy." Rin's chest tightened. "You gave me reasons to doubt. And you gave me reasons to leave," he said. The words hit her harder than shouting ever could. From that day, she lived with a constant fear that every disagreement might be the one that made him disappear for good. And Cale knew it. Whenever she pushed too hard, he would retreat just enough to remind her how easily he could vanish. The threat was never spoken, but it was always there, silent and sharp between them. Rin started changing herself in small ways that felt invisible at first. She stopped wearing clothes he once criticized. She avoided people he didn't like. She muted her laughter when he seemed irritated. "You're calmer now," he told her one night, resting his head against her shoulder. "You're finally learning." The words made her stomach twist, but she forced a smile. "Learning what?" she asked. "How not to provoke me," he replied. She nodded even though something inside her screamed. When she looked in the mirror later, she barely recognized the quiet girl staring back. She remembered who she used to be. Loud, curious, stubborn in ways that once felt like strength. Now even her thoughts felt borrowed. And worst of all, Cale praised her silence as if it were growth. "You're becoming easier to love," he said once. Rin wondered for the first time if being loved by him required her to disappear completely. The internet found Cale before the truth ever did. Friend sent Rin a message late at night. "Is this your Cale?" Below it was a picture of him standing too close to another girl. His arm wrapped around her waist with a familiarity that made Rin's chest constrict. The caption beneath the photo read, "Best weekend ever." Her hand shook so badly she almost dropped the phone. When she confronted him, Cale didn't even deny it at first. He just studied her face like he was deciding what version of the truth she could survive. "You always assume the worst," he said calmly. "Because the worst keeps showing up," she replied. He sighed. "That was before we made things serious again." "We never stopped being serious," she said. He stepped closer, his voice low. "You see, this is why I don't tell you things. You turn moments into weapons." For the first time, Rin didn't argue. She just looked at him and felt something inside her quietly begin to detach. Rin did not confront Cale again for days after that. Not because the questions were gone, but because something inside her had gone quiet. She moved through her days with a strange calm, answering him when he spoke, nodding when he complained, smiling when he expected it. Cale noticed the shift. "You've changed," he said one evening, watching her from across the room. "So have you," she replied simply. He narrowed his eyes. "You sound distant." "Maybe I finally learned how," she said. The words landed badly. He crossed the room in 2 long steps and took her wrist. Not tightly, but with intention. "Don't pull away from me," he warned. "I'm not pulling away," she said softly. "I'm standing where I always stood. You just moved the line." He released her slowly, studying her like a threat he didn't yet understand. That night he was unusually kind. He cooked for her. He laughed more than usual. He touched her like he was trying to remind her who she belonged to. But Rin felt it clearly now. The kindness was not comfort. It was strategy. The following week, Kale accused her of cheating. The claim came out of nowhere, sudden and sharp. "You've been different," he said. "Different means distant. Distant means hiding something." Rin stared at him in disbelief. "You're projecting," she said calmly. "You always twist things," he snapped. "You think because I made one mistake that I'm the only one capable of it." "You didn't make one mistake," she replied. "You made a pattern." His face darkened. "So now I'm the villain in your story." "You made yourself that," she said quietly. The argument exploded after that, voices colliding, memories being used like weapons. At some point, Kale shouted, "No one will ever understand you the way I do." And for the first time, Rin answered without fear. "That's what scares me." The room fell silent. He looked stunned. She realized then how powerful truth sounded when it was no longer afraid. That night, Rin slept at her friend's place for the first time since the relationship began. Kale called over and over, his messages shifting like weather, from anger to apology, from blame to desire, from threats to promises. "Come back. I can't sleep without you. You're breaking us." Rin turned her phone face down and cried into her pillow, not because she missed him, but because she finally saw how trapped she had been. The next morning, she woke to 30 missed calls and a long message that ended with, "If you leave, I'll destroy myself." The words wrapped around her chest like chains. For a moment, guilt almost pulled her back. Then her friend placed a hand over hers and said gently, "That's not love. That's a hostage note." Something in Rin steadied. For the first time, the fear of staying became stronger than the fear of leaving. Rin returned to the apartment 2 days later to collect a few things, hoping Kale would not be there. The door was unlocked. The lights were on. He was sitting on the edge of the bed like he had been waiting in silence for hours. "So you finally came back," he said quietly. "I came for my clothes," she replied, keeping her voice steady. "You left like I meant nothing," he said. "You left me no choice," she answered. He stood slowly. "You always make yourself the victim," he said. "And you always make yourself the judge," she replied. For a moment, neither of them moved. Then he stepped aside and gestured toward the closet with surprising calm. "Take what you want," he said. Rin felt the tension coil tighter in her chest as she packed. Every folded shirt felt like a goodbye she wasn't allowed to celebrate. When she reached for her jacket, Kale's voice dropped low. "You'll regret this." She paused, met his eyes and said softly, "I already regret staying." Kale's rage did not explode that day. It settled. And that scared her more. After she moved out, his messages became short and polite, almost civil. "Hope you're safe," he texted once. "Let me know if you need anything." Rin's hands shook every time his name appeared. Silence had once been his weapon. Now calm was. Her friends warned her. "This isn't over," one of them said. "Men like him don't lose quietly." Rin wanted to believe she was free, but freedom felt unfamiliar and fragile, like glass under pressure. Then small things started happening. Rumors at her workplace, strangers watching her too closely, people treating her differently without explanation. When she finally confronted Kale over a call, he laughed softly. "You really think your choices don't echo?" he asked. "What did you do?" she whispered. "Nothing you can prove," he replied before hanging up. The next betrayal came from a place she never suspected. One evening, a mutual friend called her crying. "Kale told everyone you cheated first," the friend said. "He showed them messages." Rin's stomach dropped. "That's impossible," she said. "Those messages didn't exist." "They do now," the friend replied quietly. Rin understood then. He had rewritten her in public the same way he had rewritten her in private. By the time she tried to defend herself, the story had already taken root. "You ruined him," people whispered. "You played him." Even some who once stood by her began to fade into suspicion. Rin sat alone that night, staring at her phone, realizing that escape did not always come with victory. Sometimes it came with exile. And Kale, somewhere in the quiet, was still pulling strings. Rin learned quickly how lonely truth could be when lies traveled faster. At work, conversations stopped when she entered rooms. Smiles became stiff. One afternoon, a coworker she once trusted asked quietly, "Did you really see someone else while you were with him?" Rin felt something sink in her chest. "No," she answered firmly. "Then why does everyone say you did?" the coworker asked. Rin had no answer for that. She started eating lunch alone. She stopped sharing stories. Every place that once felt safe now felt like a courtroom where she had already been judged. That night, she stood in front of the mirror and whispered, "I know who I am." But her voice sounded unsure, even to herself. Cale appeared in her dreams again. Calm, smiling, always watching. When she woke, her phone was buzzing with a new message from him after weeks of silence. "You look tired lately. Are you sleeping well?" She stared at the screen, heart pounding. How did he know? She didn't reply. A second message followed minutes later. "You never listen. That's why everything falls apart." She blocked him with shaking hands. For a brief moment, peace returned. Then an unknown number called. She let it ring. Another followed. Then another. By midnight, her phone was silent again, but the silence felt staged, like the pause before another strike. Rin started writing everything down. Calls, messages, whispers, strange interactions, building a timeline only she could see. Each entry made the pattern clearer. Cale did not want her back. He wanted her small. He wanted her uncertain. One evening, as she wrote, her friend watched quietly and finally said, "You're not healing. You're building a case." Rin didn't deny it. "I need to understand what happened to me," she replied. "Understanding won't change what he did," her friend said. "No," Rin answered softly. "But it will change what I allow next." For the first time in weeks, she felt something that almost resembled control returning to her hands. The first public crack in Cale's story appeared when one of the forged messages failed to match a date he had given in an interview-style post online. At first, Rin didn't even notice it. Someone else did. A stranger messaged her late at night with a single line. "Something about his screenshots doesn't add up." Rin stared at the words for a long time before replying. "What doesn't add up?" she asked. Minutes later, the stranger sent a breakdown. Timestamps that overlapped, conversations that could not have happened in the order shown. Rin felt a slow, controlled heat rise in her chest. For the first time, the lie was not just emotional. It was technical, provable. She thanked the stranger, closed the chat, and sat in silence. This wasn't victory. It was an